Thank you, Drew. And let's go ahead and start with introduction. So maybe we can start from the south going north this time. So I think let's start with Petaluma.
Good morning, everybody. Heather Hines, Interim Community Development Director with the City of Petaluma. Happy to be here.
That takes us to Cotati next.
Morning, everybody. I'm JP Harris with the City of Cotati, sitting in for Noah, who is taking some time off to be with family.
Mark.
Jeff Beiswinger, City of Roanoke Park.
Morning. I don't see Sonoma or Sebastopol on. I don't see Santa Rosa yet. So let's go. I think that'll take us to Windsor.
Good morning, everybody. Patrick Streeter, Town of Windsor.
No Healdsburg yet. So Cloverdale.
Hi, everyone. Kevin Thompson with the City of Cloverdale.
Let's go to Regional Partners.
That's me. Ada Chan, ABEG MTC.
Hi, Ada. And I see Chris from Smart. Morning, Chris.
Morning, Chris Bearden from Smart.
Luke from the Collaborative. Morning, Luke.
Good morning, Luke Lindenbush, Housing Policy Planner with the Napa Sonoma Collaborative, sitting in for Jane Riley.
I see Carrie just came on. We're just doing introductions, Carrie.
Excellent, thank you. Carrie Swanstrom, Planning Director, City of Sebastopol.
And I can kick things off for SCTA, RCPA, Chris Barney, SCTA.
And I'm Tanya Nareth with the RCPA.
Drew Nichols, SCTA.
Dana Teray, SCTA.
This is BC Caps with RCPA.
Ross Clendetta, SCTA, RCPA.
I think that's the SCTA, RCPA team and members of the public. I see Steve Bertelbaugh on the line with us. Morning, Steve. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
All right, so that will take us to our administrative items. Drew, I think we have enough people to approve the meeting notes. That sound right?
I see 8. We're out of 10. I think there's 10 jurisdictions for the committee, so I believe we have met the quorum for it.
Great. So I think we need a motion and a second to approve those meeting notes. If anyone would like to do that. We have 2 sets. We have the set from June 16th and August 18th.
Hi, this is Kevin with Cloverdale. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Great. I don't think we need a formal vote, but if there are no objections to that, I think we're good. The chair would also like us to adopt the agenda and make any changes as well. So if we could have a motion and second for that as well, unless anything needs to be added or removed.
I'll move to accept the agenda as written.
Second.
Great. Sounds good. So with that, we'll move on to the third administrative item. So this is just something Brian wanted to get the group thinking about for a more robust item in December or January. Just like people to think about discussion topics and work items for 2023. So I'd be happy to note anything down right now if anyone has any ideas off the top of their head. If not, we can go ahead and dig into that more in December. But I'd like to open it up to discussion. And I see Brian on as well. Brian, we just finished with introductions and approving the meeting notes and agenda, and we're on the 2023 PAC work plan item.
Nice. Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone.
So it looks like Carrie, you'd like to jump in?
Yeah, so and this is on the 2023 PAC work plan. Nicely, most of us will be done with their housing elements and starting implementation on that. So there are probably going to be implementation items related to that we all have. So, obviously I don't know exactly what those are yet. For Sebastopol, they are probably vacation rentals. We are looking at doing a workforce housing overlay. And so I don't know if other communities are planning on doing that. And so some discussion of that would be great. On the sustainability side, we up in Sonoma County, because we're not connected to the San Francisco Bay other than Petaluma, haven't had any sea level rise study done. And I don't know if that's of interest to people or not. Obviously, the coastal stuff, Brian, you may be from the county's perspective, but there's also implications to the Laguna, which touches, everyone but Cloverdale and and Sonoma. So I would put that up as something that is sort of a regional thing that I'd like to at least understand how people are dealing with. Especially in light of the Marin County draft regulations that just came out regarding construction in areas that are going to see significant sea level rise.
That makes
Which
a lot
I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested in that. It's kind of pretty big news in a way.
Okay. So far, housing element implementation and some prioritization of climate initiatives. Heather?
Yeah, just tagging on with the climate initiatives. I know that one of the things that's on my work plan in Petaluma is electrifying existing buildings, and how exactly we do that, and what can we do as regulation, and what do we do as incentives, and how do we weave in the equity layer into that. So I know that's something that I'm going to be spending a lot of time on, that it seems again like one of those things where benefit of all of us doing some brain thinking, group thinking, if other jurisdictions are kind of under that pressure to figure out how to solve it all. So one of the things on mine that I'd love to be talking about and sharing ideas and what people find, because there's even less of a template on how to do it than some of the other things all of us have already done.
Yeah, I'd second that. Just so you know, Heather, our climate action committee is actually working on a electrification survey. And that is about existing buildings and understanding what the community needs are. They've had some discussions already, but they have certainly identified that as a major greenhouse gas. It's easy to say control in new buildings, but when 95% of our stock is still existing, how do you deal with that?
Exactly. And we've started our research on it, but there's nobody else, I don't think, like a burnout ordinance or replacement requirement when you replace your appliances. There's no California jurisdictions that we've found that have done that yet. There's some different things. Denver seems to be the one that has it. So anyway, would love to share the resources we've come up with, and would love to have that conversation with all of you if that's appropriate.
Also, this may come up under the VMT discussion, but I would like to add some kind of regional mitigation or something, because well, we're realizing that there's no mitigation for us because everyone drives to Santa Rosa to get to work. So and I heard something about a bank, and I don't know if that's viable or makes sense or not, but just we could talk about that.
Especially with the new CARB numbers, and the reductions from them, the suggested reductions in BMT for all of us who are trying to get to carbon neutrality, and that's such a big player. And even if you thought you were doing okay, the goal line has shifted. So how do we deal with that?
Right. Well, this was just meant to start everyone's just thinking as we look into 2023 and our respective city councils and board of supervisors and our various committees that we help facilitate and lead. I suspect they'll be having similar discussions. So to the degree that the PAC and this group can help support some of those top line items. So how implementation of housing, I'm hearing climate focus, as well as transportation. So I think Chris and we talked a little bit just about circulating, and I'm sorry if I'm covering this again, but just some sort of survey, right, to the larger PAC, so we can start maybe putting a work plan together, and maybe even some sort of mechanism to report back out to the SCTA board on our deliverables for next year. Great. All right, well, more to come on that, but thank you for the input. And Chris, did you do the just your intro?
Yeah, just as SCTA. So if you want, I could give a quick introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian asked me, just since I'm stepping into a new role here at SCTA, just give a brief introduction on my background and everything like that. So I believe I know everyone on the call and have worked with you at least on modeling and data issues, but I've been at SCTA for 17 years, started out working with data on data analysis and developing our travel demand model. Before that, I worked in state and local government doing GIS and asset management and infrastructure cost modeling and mostly economic modeling, so less of the transportation side. And I've been in Sonoma County for 17 years. So really looking forward to continuing to work with everyone and encourage you if there's anything that I or the SCTA team can help you out with, please don't hesitate to reach out. So yeah, thanks.
All right, congratulations, Chris. And just it's Director of Planning, new role, right?
Yep, Director of Planning.
Excellent. Yep. All right. So let's move to item number 3, RCPA discussion and climate action.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to BC in just a moment, but did want to comment on your discussion about the work plan for this coming year. Really excited to hear the interest in existing building electrification, because that is also on RCPA's work plan and priority list. So we're certainly here to support jurisdictions in whatever way we can. And we do have some connections in with BayREN, and BayREN is actually planning to do some work around existing building electrification as well. And in fact, they have I think an ad hoc work group that's starting to look at policy options. So definitely want to be part of that conversation. And then also on the VMT mitigation question, that is a strategy that we have included in our mobilization strategy. It's not something that we have started work on, but again, we're definitely here to support the group in whatever way we can. So just wanted to thank you for that interest in the climate issues and let me know we're here to support you. And with that, I'll turn it over to BC to give an update on a couple of the items that we're working on currently.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tanya. Good morning, everyone. This is BC Caps. I'm a climate change program specialist here with RCPA and wanted to provide updates on 3 items that we've been working on recently. And I'll actually pass it back to Tanya for a final update. So the And I was not planning to give full presentations on any of the 3 of these items today. I have more resource links that I will be dropping in the chat as I speak. So first off, I wanted to talk briefly about our greenhouse gas, community-wide greenhouse gas inventory that we've been working on. We have been pulling those stats and that analysis together over the last few months. And we finalized that report at the beginning of this month and presented to our the SCTA RCPA board on, I guess it was October 11th. We have that report finalized. I'm going to drop the links into, let me see if I can do this really quick. There are 3 links there that I just dropped into the chat. The first is a link to the full report in PDF format. The second is a link to the presentation that was given to our RCPA board. And the third is actually recording of that full presentation, which allows one to actually sit and kind of hear the full discussion. So for the course of today on the GHG inventory, I wanted to just hit some of the highlights so that everyone here kind of knew kind of the trends that we're seeing. So as a bit of a background, this is an inventory that RCPA has done. This is our 5th time completing the inventory. So we now have data for the years 1990, 2010, 2015, 2018, and 2020. And so with that, that gives us 30 years of kind of climate data to look at and start to really see some trends, both countywide and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So some of the highlights are over the course of since 1990, by our accounting methods, we have been able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions countywide by approximately 22.9% or 23%. So there had been a goal set as part of the Climate Action 2020 effort of aiming for a 25% reduction by the year 2020. So we're just short of that mark at 23%. But I really think that that is nothing to be ashamed of, or yeah, we didn't quite meet the mark, but it is quite an accomplishment that I think that there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to both kind of staff here, RCPA and SCTA, to all of our local jurisdictional partners and everyone working in the community-based organizations over the last few decades, really to try to ratchet these emissions down. Within that 23% reduction, we've seen some of the highlights are we've seen a 49% reduction in building energy use over that time frame. That is predominantly due to the creation of Sonoma Clean Power. Is one of the key leading reasons when that organization agency was created and able to source cleaner sources of renewable energy. That really did overnight make a dramatic increase. And now we're seeing that in total, that is kind of a 49% reduction in emissions. Also built into that is the work that has been going on around electrification of buildings and just reducing energy efficiency wise and reducing energy use in buildings, even though that's a kind of small pieces that we chip away at. In the terms of, let's see, transportation, obviously a huge one. This is an area where this makes up the bulk of our greenhouse gas emissions in the county at 58% of the emissions. And one of the thing I wanted to point out there was really over the 30 years, over the time span, we're only seeing a 1% reduction in those emissions. And so we know, I think everyone here knows how difficult and nut that is to crack, and the continued work on reducing VMT and reducing emissions from transportation will be incredibly important if we're going to meet our future GHG goals. When we look at the difference between 2018 and 2020, we are seeing a dramatic decrease in GHG emissions in the transportation sector over the course of the last 2 years. That maps very directly with the impact of COVID-19. And so that is something, as we're seeing the immediate dip over the last 2 years in emissions in transportation, that is something that we'll be watching very carefully as we move forward to see if those reductions remain in place or to see how what those reduction levels kind of do over long term. Let's see. We've then in the water realm, we're seeing a 68% reduction in emissions from water. That is predominantly, I think, due to the work of Sonoma Water and their carbon-free water campaign, which came to a culmination in, I believe, 2015, with kind of a carbon-free water supply for Sonoma County. And then we're also seeing dramatic reductions of 50% or more in the solid waste category. So that really has to do, the main driver there, we believe, is the work that's being done by Zero Waste Sonoma as one of our key partners, and really the implementation by Zero Waste Sonoma and a number of jurisdictions, all of the local jurisdictions on the new state standards of organic reduction of organic waste and getting those out of the waste stream so that they don't get to landfills and create methane. So we're really seeing a dramatic increase there. And I just saw that Carrie put a note in the chat around jurisdictional slides. I may try to pull up one slide really quickly. One of the things that we're doing in this report, which I believe has been done in the past, but we haven't highlighted as much, is not just looking at GHG emissions per a jurisdiction to jurisdiction, as we normally do, but then also looking at it, what are the per capita levels across jurisdictions? And one of the trends we're seeing there, which is not that surprising when one starts to think about it, is that actually some of the largest GHG emissions emitters in the county are actually have some of the lower per capita rates. And that's really, even though a city may be larger in size, there are some efficiencies, some resource efficiencies by having kind of the density more in an urban pattern. And so we're seeing those and hoping to continue to work with both the large and the small jurisdictions to figure out at that per capita number that that's really one of the key drivers that we can work to ratchet down. I don't want to, I actually don't, that slide is in as part of those links I sent. I'm not going to break right now and try to pull it up separately. Possibly that I can in just a minute. So that's really a synopsis, a summary really quick on the GHG inventory that we've been working on. Two other highlights I wanted to call out really quick before passing over to Tanya was we have also, we are getting very close to finalizing and releasing a report that we've been compiling on summarizing different tree protection ordinances across all the jurisdictions throughout the county and looking at the existing tree protection ordinances that may or may not be in place, what those cover, what they don't, how they compare jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and then compiling a list of recommendations that local entities may want to consider at whatever time they're going to update that tree protection ordinance. So we have, there's approximately, I believe, 25 or 30 different recommendations in the report. I've been working with a graduate student based out of University of Colorado Boulder, who's been doing an incredible amount of the work on this. Many of you on this call have been in contact with her on this, so I appreciate. Thank you all for the information that you've given to her and that we've been able to compile. So that report is currently being reviewed internally, and I hope that we'll really be able to release that within the next couple of weeks, and with the thought of giving a presentation on that work to the RCPA board as part of a larger presentation in December. And lastly, I wanted to touch really quick on the research work that I've been doing on the potential use of hydrogen as a transportation fuel. So this is a topic that has come out of the larger discussion on the banning of the construction of new gas stations and the questions that arose as to whether or not where hydrogen as a fueling source fits into that. So our perspective here has been that we don't actually anticipate the RCPA board taking a position or stating a position on this, but my research has really been more about what are the key issues at play, what are some of the issues that local municipalities may need to think about as they think about potentially permitting for hydrogen fuel. And so again, that report is very near to completion. It's being reviewed by Tanya and several others internally. And then I specifically wanted to, we'll be reaching back out to Jeff at Roanoke Park to kind of walk through the report with him because of some of the questions that have been raised have kind of come out of the work in Roanoke Park on the gas station ban. So that's an update for me. I'll pass it back to Tanya, and while Tanya's speaking, I'll see if I can pull up that jurisdiction slide, and we'll see if there's a space where we want to display that. So.
Great, thanks, BC. So I just wanted to wrap up with a brief update on funding topics and the work that RCPA is doing around securing additional funding for climate work. First, just wanted to let folks know that we did give a brief update to our board on the Inflation Reduction Act at the October board meeting, and we'll continue to track that big source of funding for climate. And there will be new grant and funding opportunities coming out of that we'll be sure to track and communicate to all of you. And if you'd like to see the slides that I presented, I'm happy to share that with all of you. And the second thing I wanted to provide an update on is the work that we have an ad hoc of our board, a climate funding ad hoc that's been looking at ways to secure additional revenue locally through some type of local funding measure. And I think I've shared this slide with you in the past, but let me just bring it up as a quick refresher. So the goal is to have something to bring to the voters in 2024. Our board has not yet made any decisions about what type of revenue measure, whether it's a sales tax or some other measure, but we do know that whatever it is, we'll need to put together an expenditure plan that would show or define how the funding would be used. And so this slide shows a high-level timeline of the work that we're doing with our board as well as with the community to, first of all, continue to work with all of you and staff to implement solutions where we have resources, and then doing as much outreach and engagement as we can to develop a community vision and climate solutions for getting to our 2030 goal. And then beginning in 2023, really starting to hone in on community priorities around both funding options as well as how we invest that money, or what kinds of projects and programs would the community like to see invested in to achieve our climate goal. And then by 2024 to have that revenue measure ready to go. And so as part of this effort around the community engagement, our ad hoc has decided to, has asked staff to put together a community-led steering committee and a set of program committees that will basically do the work of reaching out to the community in each of the major initiative areas. So transportation, buildings, so really building energy, and then the land and water, which is topics like, sequestration and really looking at our natural systems in Sonoma County. And so we've identified leads for these committees, and we plan to kick off this effort in December with a community meeting. And our idea is that each program committee will be an opportunity for community members to participate in looking at, say, for example, transportation options for potential projects and programs, and work together to come up with a set of recommendations or options to share with the RCPA board as it puts together that final expenditure plan. The other key piece of this structure that we put together based on feedback from a number of community members is this environmental justice advisors circle that you see on the chart that really is meant to show that we intend to integrate environmental justice concerns and issues into all aspects of developing this overall set of recommendations for the board. And if we're able to secure the necessary funding, we do intend to contract with an EJ or an equity consultant to help advise and guide the work of these different committees. And on that note, one source of funding that we did end up pursuing is through the Strategic Growth Council, their Regional Climate Collaboratives program. We did submit a grant application in partnership with Daily Acts to secure funding that would enable us to, for example, compensate community-based organizations in working with these program committees to do that community engagement. So just wanted to give you a brief update. The community meeting will be on December 14th, 5:30 to 7 p.m. and we'll be getting more information out about that as the date gets closer. So that's what I had to share around funding, and BC and I would welcome any questions that you have on any of the RCPA activities.
Thank you, Tanya. And then just the 14th December, is that a virtual or in-person?
We're actually planning to do a hybrid. The in-person piece will be at the Advanced Energy Center, and then we'll have a Zoom option for folks who aren't able to be there in person.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanya. And then page 14 of the PowerPoint looks to have the per capita breakdown for anyone interested. All right, Carrie.
Yeah, Tanya, I was just curious if you, for the federal act, if you guys have identified anything that you guys plan to do a grant or a funding request for.
Not yet. As I understand it, the programs are under development. And so I think the soonest that we would know kind of program requirements is in, I want to say January, February of 2023. So certainly it's would benefit all of us to be thinking about in those different program areas, what types of programs or projects might we want to submit for, but we don't yet have the details about, those requirements of those programs. So we'll definitely.
Thanks. And is that something, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we'll definitely keep an eye on that and share that information as it becomes available.
Awesome. And especially if there's a sort of a regional
yes
approach that we can do on any of those.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tanya and BC.
Great, thanks.
Item number 4, SB 743 implementation and a VMT update by Chris.
Yeah, so thanks. As you all know, we've wrapped up the work on the VMT reduction calculator. So that's out in the wild now. And so I just wanted to do a quick check-in to see if that's actually being used, if you have any use cases. And then also wanted to check in and get a read on what additional needs there are out there. So it sounds like Kevin heard you loud and clear about the mitigation banking and exchanges and fees. So that's definitely something that is on our radar. Some colleagues down in Contra Costa County are working on that right now. They have a Caltrans planning grant, and they're working with consultants on identifying some potential implementation options on that. So I checked in with them earlier this week, and they're hoping to have some information on kind of a pilot approach out associated with their I-680 Express Lane project pretty soon. So hopefully we'll have some examples of kind of how that could be implemented at the project scale, but also the countywide or jurisdiction scale as well. So more information to come on that pretty soon. So that's definitely on our work plan to look at that and look at options. I know that's definitely a need out there. But yeah, just wanted to check in and see if there are any other needs or other ways we can support you in implementing SB 743 and, estimating VMT. A few other things that we'll plan on doing going forward, as well as keeping the VMT summaries updated, the VMT maps updated as well. But just wanted to, make sure we're aware of any needs you may have.
Heather?
Oh, you moved. I feel like I still need to make eye contact on my Zoom, even though you can't see me making eye contact. So all of a sudden Ada went where Chris was. So my understanding is that the CARB recommendation or guidance is now up to 22% reduction. And I'm kind of curious if other jurisdictions, I actually don't recall. I know that when Petaluma adopted our local guidelines, we went with the 16.8 instead of the 15%, because at the time that's what CARB was recommending, higher than the state, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, and we're going to start discussing whether we modify our local thresholds, and I'm curious if other people have even started thinking about that or grappling with that. And did other communities go higher than 15% in Sonoma County, or did most others stick with the 15%? And is anyone contemplating increasing local guidelines to the 22% as recommended by CARB? Okay.
I know, I'll just say, in Windsor, I'm having trouble getting the council to agree to 15%, so.
So probably not going to 22, Patrick. Okay. I mean, I have if Petaluma's kind of track record follows, I could see, and granted, it won't come until after an election, but I could see Petaluma wanting to do 22% if we're saying we want to be carbon neutral by 2030, and and I just I don't exactly know what that means for. It's kind of like, does that mean everything kind of outside of our immediate station area would then be an EIR or not? So, okay, well, maybe we'll check back in as people are grappling with it and see where people land. Thank you.
Cool. And Heather, I wonder, just with Petaluma being so far ahead of the curve, are there any experiences or case studies that you can share, just having gone through implementation and then assuming that projects have come through? Is there anything that you could share that may help move along other jurisdictions?
Well, we haven't had a whole lot of larger housing. So we've got a couple EIRs in progress that are going to have overrides. But the council hasn't come before the council yet to do overrides for VMT. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. What is really becoming clear is we need to get the program set up so that we can, whether it's money to do improvements or kind of banking the money to, whatever it is, that you can't solve it on a project by project basis. Basically, I guess that's the main takeaway, is you can't meet those standards on a project by project basis. So we've got this threshold, and we don't have the programs in place in a lot of ways. I think one of the things that Petaluma is positive for Petaluma is we have our own transit system, our own bus system. So I'm really optimistic that will help us, and we'll be able to get creative with expanding our own local transit, which will then address some of those issues. But right now it's really just around the stations. So stay tuned, I guess.
Ada.
Hi, I guess I was a similar kind of path. I noticed that many of the jurisdictions within Sonoma County don't have thresholds adopted, and haven't kind of, we were trying to do the VMT cohort, and that hasn't been very successful, and just kind of interested in hearing from folks. We know part of it's a timing thing with the housing elements, but when were people thinking of getting around to this maybe, or if there is something else that we could be doing to assist? Would just love to hear anybody's thoughts on kind of what's working, what's not working, and what could be done, and maybe your timelines. Well, there's 7 jurisdictions in Sonoma, according to my to what I've been given.
I'll step in. Ada, both John and my associate planner and I have been trying to participate in those VMT sessions. So yes, we have housing element along with a couple other larger projects going on right now, and it's a capacity issue, to some regard. And I think for us, if it's I'm kind of using it as an overview. I have 2 proposals from consultants to do the VMT work, but because they're not on board to help me with it at the time, it's sort of like I'm kind of listening, but I'm not quite sure. And yes, I am guilty of not doing my homework. Absolutely. But it is helpful to kind of at least hear Ian and whatnot.
And know what you're going to be asked from your consultants.
Yeah, in some regard. And I almost feel like, hey, if it was redone at a time, like the time frame, I think you're right, is if it was redone at a time where it could be done in tandem with my consultants already on board in the future, that would definitely be something I would want to do, because I think it is helpful to have that crossover. We may be using Fair and Peer, so it may be a, you know, that's one of the options. The other is W-Trans. So those are, I just, yeah, it's the timing and capacity. And part of it, it's the SB2 grants. I've got other stuff going on to fill, to make sure we use those fundings.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll go next because it's been drama-filled VMT process in Windsor. We have what I think is a great policy in draft form. When we took it in front of our planning commission, there's some vocal members of the development community that, you know, gave the doom and gloom that this is going to make every project have to do an EIR and it's going to stop all housing other than what's screened out. And so the planning commission felt strongly about that too. I think they see it as an overreach from the state. And so it got kind of tied up in planning commission, but we did bring it forward. Again, the staff not really recommending that they not amend the policy, but saying, here's the policy as staff put it together. Here are some amendments from the development community, which we can't really support at this time. And the council kind of was reluctant to act on it. So they've asked for more feedback. We had Chris Barney came and gave kind of a good presentation from SCTA standpoint.
And do you have a consultant that you're working with?
We had, yeah, working with W-Trans. Okay. So yeah, at this point, I think it's good. We just like Sebastopol, we have so much else going on. And we have 4 council members, 4 of our 5 council members up for election in November. So our thinking is to wait till we have whatever this council, then, you know, for the next 4 years, what that council looks like seated, and at the beginning of next year, bring it forward and try to have those discussions again.
Great, thanks, Patrick.
Well,
so yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, no, we're about to hire Fair and Peers and First Carbon to redo our circulation element and probably do an EIR and also adopt a VMT threshold. So it's probably gonna happen in the beginning of next year.
That's probably about our timeline too, because it's all related to the general plan adoption, which is most likely going to happen. Of course, I was thinking it was going to be adopted by now, but anyway, probably the first part of 2023.
And then do you have a consultant on board to work with, or you're just going to start working on it?
Oh, well, we have Fair and Peers is on our general plan consultant team.
Oh.
Yep.
JP?
Yeah, we adopted ours 2 years ago now. We did it all in-house. And then also kind of getting to Chris's question, most of our stuff and it hasn't been a whole lot, it's actually kind of filtered out. But I just used the calculator on a project that I was certain was going to have VMT impacts. Because it's outside of our high VMT area, and use the calculator. I don't know. I had a problem with it because it kept telling me there was a value problem, and it might have been that the reduction exceeded the max. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to you offline about it, Chris. But what I did find, though, the calculator provided the calculation that it wants to do, and I found that really helpful. So I was able to kind of go through it manually and get to the same numbers that I was reading in a traffic analysis. So I felt like I was able to check my work and their work, and so it was really helpful. And I'll talk to you. I think I understand what the issue was. I just couldn't get it to display the value that I wanted it to. But anyway, very helpful tool, it looks like. I'm looking forward to using it more. I wanted more things to use, but there's really only one mitigation measure with this. But so it was exciting, and good work on that. That's all.
I should also mention that we are having Ian run the traffic model on the casino expansion, just to see what sort of impact that's going to have in relation to our general plans. So that should probably break it. So we will find out soon. So
Thanks. Just wanted to know what was going on, and as we're thinking about retooling the program, my eyebrows raised a little bit to see so many of y'all there on the list.
You know, also kind of getting to Heather's question, I was surprised, like I just said, that this project that I was reviewing is not going to have any VMT impact, because it's kind of outside of our downtown area. It has a lot of, a lot of residential and commercial. As we move forward, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a desire to go to a higher level of mitigation or reduction in VMT from 15 to 22. I really am kind of surprised the way this one just kind of fell off. It's like, oh, okay, there's no impact to VMT, even though it's certainly going to increase VMT by any rational observation. So, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, JP. All right. Well, maybe this is something I'm just thinking through. I know in the past we've talked about, coming up with some dashboard where we're sort of sharing some of our successes and where we're at status wise. And I feel like it's a theme that comes up across some of our different policy topics and initiatives. And so it'll be good to just get some feedback from this group, just as part of that work plan. How best can the PAC serve each and every one of us for this next year? So good conversation on VMT. All right. See, I'm not sure who is leading this one, but item number 5, grant opportunity.
Yeah, I can just talk a little bit about that, Brian. So we received a notification just a couple of weeks ago on some different climate adaptation grant opportunities that are available this fall. So one of them is a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant focused on just climate adaptation. So we've actually applied for and received funds from this grant program a couple times in the past, one for the Vision Zero Action Plan and Vision Zero project in Sonoma County, and one for the active transportation plan that's underway. But this is a one-time additional infusion of funds into the program focused on climate adaptation. So there's a lot of information available in that attachment that we added to the PAC agenda. So if you're interested, I encourage you to take a look at that. One thing that really jumped out was evacuation planning in there as well. So that is a potential project category for that grant program. There are a couple other one-time grants coming out from OPRs as well, the Office of Planning and Research. They're also both focused on adaptation and resilience planning. And there are a few things they called out there as well. Again, these are one-time programs. One potential project is updating general plan safety elements to comply with new state guidelines, developing climate adaptation plans, coastal programs, and hazard mitigation plans. So there's actually going to be a webinar on those two specific programs next Tuesday. And information has been kind of hard to get for those two OPR programs. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the registration link into the chat in case anyone's interested. It's next Tuesday, October 25th, 10 to noon. And it'll be a joint webinar led by OPR and Caltrans. So I just dropped that into the chat here as well. So I'm planning on attending that, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more information. So if you're interested and aren't able to attend, please just reach out to me and I can try and give you a summary of what's going on, you know, deadlines, how to apply, things like that. So yeah, that's the report. Brian, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Ada?
I guess I was just going to mention, not that the MTC Commission heard and will have approved a release of funds for PDR plans and TA that will be released in December. There will also be a second call out more in supporting jurisdictions with TOCs in the summer. So, and there'll also be a PDA and PPA call in December, and then second call for TOC specific and PDA over the summer.
Excellent, thank you.
And Ada, TOC is
transit.
The transit oriented communities.
Communities. Okay.
That the details of that, like they'll be got, you know, all of that's moving. So we're not really clear what it will look like. But needing to support jurisdictions that have those designations also.
And Ada, we're hoping maybe to have you or someone else from MTC ABAG talk a little bit about that later this year, maybe December. I'll reach out to you and see.
Yeah,
we can set something up.
and I'll keep an eye out for when there's actually something, a complete kind of ability to communicate something. And I'll just keep that on the radar for me.
And Ada, that would, I think, maybe the bulletin that you typically share out, that's probably a good spot, right? All right. Lots of money flying around. Okay, item number 6, standing updates, and it looks like there's a specific focus or request to cover. So VMT, if there's any additional jurisdictions, and then vacation rental policy. And so maybe we focus our updates on those two, and then looks like there's also an SCTA board planning activities report. And so, Chris, is that something you want to report out on?
That's just a kind of the annual or the monthly report we give to our board. So we just attach it so you kind of know additional items that SCTA planning staff's working on. Just one additional announcement. We do have 2 recruitments going on right now, one for a data analyst that'll be focused on data and supporting the travel demand model and BMT implementation, and then a transportation planning position that'll be focusing on transit integration and travel demand management. So those postings are both available on our website.
Great, thanks, Chris. All right, who's tackling vacation rentals?
Santa Rosa is. Yeah, it's for Santa Rosa, short-term vacation rentals has been our never-ending nightmare. We are in the process, so we adopted our ordinance, the urgency ordinance, in October of last year. And we are in the process of doing an update. So we'll actually be doing some outreach here, I think within the next month or so. We've started doing, we have a survey up right now, and we're kind of popping up at various events, not fully scheduled for that, but we do have we're going to be doing a kind of a, I guess, a fully remote workshop. I don't think we have a date for it yet, but that'll be coming up soon, trying to get some feedback from the community. But it's been relatively hostile here in Santa Rosa on short-term vacation rentals. And so we're trying to figure out what the next iteration of our ordinance will be. We're also still trying to slog through our existing permits that were submitted with the adoption of the urgency ordinance. It has been a challenge. And so we've got a flurry of things that have actually been happening this week with regard to that. So just trying to get through that. Not a whole lot more to report out other than we're all just trying not to pull all of our hair out at the moment. So it has not been fun. For those of you who haven't gone through the short-term rental ordinance stuff yet, hopefully you don't have to do what we've been doing. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll just jump in that Windsor is going through those STR pains as well, and she'll blanking on her name.
Kim?
Well, in Santa Rosa.
Oh, Ellen. Oh, Sheila. Are you talking about Sheila?
No, not Sheila. Who's doing your STR ordinance?
Oh, Sherry. Sorry.
Sherry.
I thought you were talking about one of your planners.
No, Kim on our side and Sherry have been having a lot of kind of emotional sessions of just walking through what this ordinance looks like. So yeah, we have our moratorium in place, so we're not taking new applications. And we're hoping to get a comprehensive ordinance out on December 21st. But just seeing what's happened with the county and with Santa Rosa, I'm guessing it's going to be a work in progress that we have to keep amending. But yeah, that's what we're looking for, outreach and feedback. So in addition to there's very vocal neighbors of properties that want to give feedback, but we're also trying to reach out to management companies and kind of ancillary groups that work with short-term rentals to get their side of things and understand best practices. So that's where we are.
Is it because of parties? Is it like party houses that are like we're not having? Of course, I'm like, I better check with my staff because I haven't heard anything about complaints about.
Yeah, the vocal complaints for us have been party houses.
Party houses, okay, like the unhosted.
Right.
Yeah, and in Santa Rosa, and just kind of follow up on what Patrick just said. So we don't have a moratorium, but we put a cap on non-hosted, and that was in August. The council put a cap at 198 non-hosted permits, and we chose that number, which is, I know for those of us with OCD, it's a weird number. That was the total number of non-hosted permits that we had either in process or have been issued. So for those that are in process, if any are either denied or withdrawn, obviously that number is going to drop, and it actually already has. So we're now below 198. We are not accepting any new applications. We won't start accepting new applications until we've gotten through all of the in process ones so that we know what our total number is going to be that we have open. But yeah, Heather, to answer your questions, so for Santa Rosa, it's been it has been party houses, and we had one massive rager. Was it last weekend? I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it was after a cannabis event, 200 plus people at a house. It was a massive problem. But they're when they come up, it's a big deal. But it's not the much. There's not a huge amount of those. They're just very. It's very visual and talked about a lot. But for us, it's more of a split between those that want to do them to, get additional money so that they can, live here in Santa Rosa or in Sonoma County, and those that, don't want a hotel in their residential neighborhood. And that's how folks are seeing it. They're seeing it as a commercial hotel in their residential neighborhoods. So we've got people putting signs out on their front lawns, we don't want you, go away. This isn't a commercial district, that kind of thing. So it's very split right now.
I saw those signs popping up on my morning walk. I'm like, what are these signs? And then
right.
Oh, I didn't know what these signs are. So.
Yeah. So it's parking, it's evacuation, it's traffic, it's commercial in a residential zone. Those are the big issues.
And I have to jump off for another meeting, but I'll just add it's the less vocal component, but also there is a housing side of it too. which is, we're trying to accommodate all these housing for the next housing cycle. And at the same time, by allowing STRs, a lot of these are operated so independently as lodging. And so they're not acting as housing. So trying to find, we have policies in our upcoming housing element that say we need to address that. So that's another thing that we're trying to tackle.
Yeah, I think that's for Sebastopol. We don't really have an issue with party houses. We actually limit for non-hosted, well, for hosted or non-hosted, 2 bedrooms. Anything beyond that is considered a B&B, and we do have a couple, like 2 B&Bs in town, but they're pretty well run and not kind of a different issue. For us, it's the commercial thing that Jessica talked about in a residential neighborhood, but it's also much more of a housing issue. We changed, just for those of you who are working on policies, we changed our regulations to adopt more than a building permit in 2018. We require a conditional use permit for an ADU created after 2017, when all the fees were dropped and the setbacks were reduced by the state, to create housing, not to create rental units that are, short-term rentals close to the property line. And we also now require it for a non-hosted rental. Our city actually very much encourages the hosted ones. Obviously not a party issue, really. For the non-hosted, we had the first conditional use permit to transfer a 2-bedroom home to a full-time vacation rental was approved by our planning commission, although they felt kind of stuck. It was appealed and our council denied it because it's not consistent with the housing element of preserving existing housing stock, and asked for a moratorium. Our moratorium has expired, and we are working on a vacation rental. It's kind of a little bit dragging right now because of the housing element and other projects. But we're looking at revising that a little bit to give a little bit more guidance to applicants, whether we set a cap or a percentage. We have 18 non-hosted rentals right now in town. Is that the appropriate limit or not? Those are the things we're working through right now. And I'm guessing we probably won't have an ordinance ready until early spring. We'd also have a council change where we have 3 of our 5 council members are retiring this year. So.
Yeah, and in Roanoke Park, just real quickly, we passed several years ago, actually, we just passed because we have the college, and I think maybe we were more worried about it than everybody else, but we just switched to hosted only. So you actually have to live there, and I think you can only do 1 room, and you can't use an ADU. So it's just really simple. It's not very friendly towards people that want to do it, but it's very limited.
But the rest of us wish we had that policy, because then we wouldn't be going through all of this right now.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier if you just say no. So anyway. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Napa's right. I mean, that's the other end of the spectrum, as far as just, complete regulation. And so I think with us, as the unincorporated Sonoma County, that we're finding that there isn't like a one size fits all across our different communities. And, we have roughly, that we know of, 2,200 non-hosted, and so that's not counting our hosted rentals, an additional 600 plus or minus in the coastal zone. And so the board has a moratorium, a temporary moratorium in place. And so with that moratorium, they've provided some additional tools for the planning department to consider. And so we're working through at the moment a set of rezoning to further regulate. So right now we have prohibitions in specific areas through an exclusionary overlay. The board voted on restricting future rentals in R1, which that was a big lift and an impact. And the thing that we're trying to figure out is, what is that threshold within a community that feels appropriate, right? So there's discussions around 5%, 10%, 0%, And so now with those tools, we'll do a round of outreach with some of our most impacted areas, and then look to bring something back early spring of next year. And I think one thing that we are finding, you know, we don't have walls within for each of our jurisdictions. So there's this sort of, I think we've heard people say the toothpaste effect, the mushroom effect. So I think this is probably one policy that we should be maybe closely collaborating or at least sharing on, because, you know, one policy that Healdsburg is making on this topic does have impacts, you know, just outside of their borders. And so, you know, maybe this is something we can, sounds like there's something to check back in with this group early next year, just once we get through the year and elections and whatnot. All right.
Hey, Brian, can I ask if the county is looking at any gas station ordinances?
Yeah, we are. So we are looking at it. It is on the. I need to finalize the work plan for our comprehensive planning group, and so it is going to be part of our 2023 work plan, and you know, it's looking like a Q2 to the board.
Great. If you could let us know, I suspect others, but I know our council will probably want to write a letter in support.
Great. Yeah, so we're looking to do that. We'll do that in-house. And yeah, when we start moving on that, I'll make sure to connect you. Thanks. All right, item number 7. Any public comment? I don't see any members of the public here. Okay. Then let's move to item number 8, and we'll get a little bit of time before our 10:30 housing collaborative. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
All right. Thanks all. Bye.